Aligning with India has a steadfast commitment to its neighbouring neighbourhood first policy and the SAGAR vision. Leaders from the neighbourhood and Indian Ocean region have been invited as distinguished guests for the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Council of Ministers following the general elections of 2024. Which is slated for 9th June, the ceremony that is. These leaders included are Sri Lanka and Maldives and Bangladesh, Mauritius, Nepal and Bhutan. The Ministry of External Affairs confirmed the acceptance from Sri Lanka, Maldives, Seychelles, Bangladesh, Mauritius, Nepal and Bhutan, among others. Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has already arrived in New Delhi with other top leaders such as Bhutan Prime Minister Tshering Tobgay and Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is expected to arrive in India very soon. What does this invitation mean, and what does this also show about the priorities that India has been reiterating time and again for its neighbours? That's exactly what we discuss. Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat, joins us on the program. Mr. Robindra Sachdev, international affairs expert, also with us on the program. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, also joining us on the show. Last but not the least, Major General Dhruv Katoch, defence expert, director of India Foundation, also joins us on the broadcast. General Katoch, I'll begin with you. Well, the results are out. It's a coalition government, but nothing has dampened the spirits of this government. They want to continue with the policies and the trajectory that they established 10 years ago. But, regardless of the hot and cold chemistry we have seen with some of our neighbours, which includes Maldives and Nepal as well, India continues to emphasize and showcase to the world that, neighbourhood is very, very important. Perhaps these are some lessons that countries like Pakistan and China may never comprehend. Sir, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Vinny.
There you
yes, very correctly stated by you. I think the message which has gone across very clearly is, regardless of the fact of the numbers which have been obtained by the National Democratic Alliance, led by the BJP, there will be no change as far as India's foreign policy is concerned. I think that message went across very clearly on the 4th of June itself. There will be no change to the foreign policy. And what we are seeing today, as far as what we will be seeing tomorrow, as far as the swearing in is concerned, is a recommitment of that policy, the neighbourhood first policy, whereby the government has made it. The government had made it very clear from 2014 itself that we are going to look at our neighbours, and that will be our first priority, the neighbourhood first policy. Now, along with that, when we look at the scene today, I think it is very important for the government also to look at its our eastern neighbours, the entire ASEAN rod, which is why the Act East policy is also very important to the country, and Bangladesh, of course, becomes an important player when we are looking into that, and Myanmar, though Myanmar has not been invited due to their own due to the internal chemistry which is at present prevalent in Myanmar. But however, I think the larger message which has gone across to the world that India's foreign policy will continue as it is. It will continue to focus on its neighbourhood in a very positive manner. And most importantly, I think the message which is going across to the rest of the world is that India's foreign policy will continue to maintain Indian interests. As it has happened over the last 10 years, we are not going to be looking at what the United States is thinking about Russia or China or what their interests are. We are going to be very, very focused on India's interest, and that message also goes across very clearly with the swearing in of Modi 3.0, which will take place tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. Vineet.
Absolutely, and Gautam, General Katoch is absolutely right. Consistency and continuity, not even in terms of what happens internally in India, but also in terms of optics with our neighbours, is very, very important. And that's in fact been one of the highlights, one of the key strokes of genius that this government has been able to establish in the last decade.
Well, our success with the neighbourhood first policy has been uneven. Nevertheless, Modi never tires in trying to promote it. He did it right from 2014, where he even had Pakistan present for his swearing in, his very first inauguration. The only one that we have a even Stevens relationship with is Bangladesh, even though we have a large refugee problem from Bangladesh and some of it via Myanmar, Bangladesh. Sri Lanka is a dependent now, and we are basically catering to it and helping it in order to ward off China. China is present in all of the neighborhood countries and making very thorough progress. The idea is to encircle India. Maldives has accepted the invitation and is also much closer to China than it used to. So it is an endeavor on the part of India and Modi's foreign policy to keep engaging with our neighbors. Nepal, well, our relationship has deteriorated quite a lot. There is no denying it. They claim land which has been left out of the equation for years, decades. They start again. Bhutan is under pressure again by China. We do have an issue with every one of our neighbors being, closer to the dragon than is comfortable for us. But in a sense, we don't have much choice, and we are doing the best we can. And from their point of view, the fact that India is a fast-growing power and will be number 3 is probably the deciding factor why they do not shun our overtures and also, in turn, engage with us. Vinny.
All right. Ambassador Sachdev, in your years, as a diplomat and as somebody who's represented the country, how well do you think India has established at least its intent? Gautam is right that, there's been an uneven relationship with a few of our neighbors. But the fact of the matter is, it's better than ever before if you look at the 70 years of independence that India has enjoyed with the same neighbors.
I think you are right. I don't take such a alarmistic view of Chinese juggernaut encircling us. China has its own limits. Its economy is not doing too well. It's internally preoccupied. And it has bigger sort of wrestling matches with European Union and United States. Its ties with many of the ASEAN countries, Japan and South Korea, are not doing too well. It's after a long hiatus that its exports have grown last month. And its catchment power in much of South is under cloud due to debt diplomacy, due to wolf warriorism, and so on. And to be specific to your issues, in my 35 years as a diplomat for India, including 12 years as ambassador in 3 different countries, I have seen Chinese to be very aggressive economically, politically, and making grand bargains for natural resources in much of the South. But these bargains were often were not sustainable, and they were not economically viable as raw material prices went down all of a sudden. And I think heads would have been rolling in China for making that kind of overcommitment to some of the southern countries. Similarly, Pakistan's CPEC is in trouble. It was touted as the biggest portion of BRI initiative with $60-odd billion being committed. Now, Pakistani Prime Minister had to postpone his budget day speech to rush to China to paper over these cracks and so that the budget can be finally approved in Beijing. Now, all that tells us that consistency and moderation as well as empathy for each other in South Asia would be our best bet. We're not going anywhere. We are developing fairly rapidly, and we present a market to these countries. A free trade area with these countries would be in our great interest. The experiments have, the jury has been out with UAE and others. The two-way FTAs have done pretty well. It's the time to raise the stake and work within SAGAR, as MEA spokesman yesterday referred to. It is security and growth for all in the region. And I think this would be a good augury to have it done for the second time. First, as inauguration of Modi 1,
Right, sir.
we had invitations, and now times have evolved, and India is far more capable partner and mature partner now.
That's exactly the operational word here, Mr. Sachdev, that it's maturity that India is showing, regardless of some arguments or verbal scuffles that we may have had with Maldives, or for that matter, even Nepal. It's always good to take this high moral ground and act as the big brother, which India has always proven to be as well.
Great. I was about to say, it's a fact of life. There's always a big brother syndrome. And you put it in a different context. I was going to say in a different context in terms of the, troubles or questions we face. So one, it's a fact of life. There is a big brother syndrome that smaller countries, smaller neighbors, they definitely, get slighted by this. I'm not saying the slightest or the smallest, but definitely, yes, that syndrome does exist, that smaller nations bordering a large nation do feel overawed and want to be, overly protective of their, whatever we may say, their cultural identity or whichever other aspects. So that will continue to be a fact with India. But on the other side, playing the big brother role with a certain, different mindset altogether is where we are. A couple of things. One is this big brother syndrome that we are, it's a fact of life for us. Secondly, yes, there has been a kind of a mixed record, we could say, and this will perhaps continue. And of course, with China fishing in these proverbial waters and instigating wherever it's able to. The key is, as I think Ambassador Sachdev said, General Katoch said, and Gautamji also said, all of us are probably looking at a consistency. A consistency, let's say, in policy and a consistency in our efforts. And as also you said, the point that we should continue to play the role of a positive big brother. The point is that this consistency or persistence, I think, is aimed at and with an objective of creating more and more interlocking linkages. The more of such interlocking linkages, we can create an ecosystem, create a context of, the more we get, interconnected with each one of our partner nations. And of course, that brings them also the benefit of the trade and India's growing economy, disaster management, emergency, etc., etc. So more and more of interlocking arrangements, interlocking partnerships has, of course, been ongoing and will continue to be. And that's where the consistency and, let's say, persistence comes in, right? We may face a situation like was with Maldives a few months ago, rhetoric flowing back and forth, fair enough, could be. But I think the job of ambassadors and generals is to kind of, create a even keel that whatever it be, there will be another day. So going with that and creating more and more linkages interconnected, be it in trade, be it in tourism, be it in people-to-people exchanges, be it in infrastructure, be it in electricity grids or energy grids, be it in food security. And of course, in this whole region, with the SAGAR context, the harnessing of the maritime resources. So I think more of these we can expect going forward, and these shall continue.
And General Katoch, right from the beginning, it's important that regardless of what a government feels or, fail to achieve, even in terms of the Lok Sabha results, the fact that, there is a continuation of a policy, a foreign policy towards our neighbors, is going to also be defining the same government for the next few years, isn't it?
Yes, actually, but I won't like to associate that with the numbers which they have got now. I think the numbers they have got now is adequate to continue with the foreign policy which had been initiated from 2014 onwards. There may be certain challenges on the domestic front, but I don't visualize any extra challenges on the external front. That is one. Number two, it was, we have been speaking about the big brother syndrome. Actually, for the last few years, what I have observed is that India has not been acting like a big brother. We've been acting like an elder brother, and some of them may perceive it to be that big brother system, but India has been very, very cautious in its approach, especially while dealing with countries like Bangladesh and Nepal. We have not attempted even to interfere in what is happening in those countries. And I think that message is also going across very clearly that you chaps have your political problems. We understand there are political compulsions. You handle them in whichever way you deem fit. We are watching. We'll help. We are not the big brother. We are the elder brother. We will not sway it one way or the other. And if you have observed, the Indian leadership is in touch with political parties of all hues in across the border. So I think that is one thing which we need to remember. Just a very minor incidental point. We don't have any refugee problem from Bangladesh. We have a very serious illegal immigrants problem. So they are not refugees. If they were refugees, it would have a different connotation altogether. But there are millions of them which have come from Bangladesh itself who are illegals. And many of them have come via Myanmar, that is the Rohingyas, through Bangladesh onto India. And I think those are the challenges which we will have to address. But there's one thing about, when the ambassador very correctly brought out the role of China. Of course, China will try to win their friends, etc., in India's backyard. But we will do the same in China too. We are also getting friendly to ASEAN. There is no such thing as any one country having a lien on friendship on any one place. So, well, the Chinese are free to come and, make friendship with the Sri Lanka or with the Maldives or with Nepal. It is up to those countries to understand what those implications are. And I think they are understanding it very, very quickly. Maldives will also understand it sooner rather than later. There is a very high price people pay when they deal with China. And Pakistan is facing that crisis. CPEC will fail. There's absolutely no doubts in my mind. It will fail. And some of the Chinese think tanks, when they had come and we had interaction with them, I told them so in very, very blunt terms, it will fail. For a very, very simple reason. The internal security situation in Pakistan is not going to improve, and they will target CPEC continuously. So that goes without saying. One small word, the ambassador, of course, may have a different view, but it is my view on any foreign policy. It is too much to expect of a foreign policy that everything will fall into your lap. I think every foreign policy is all about damage control. That, okay, things are going to go wrong somewhere, and how do we control that damage? I think the present government has been very, very effective over the last 10 years. And that gives me a great deal of confidence that when we are looking at the next 5 years or 10 years ahead, the Indian foreign policy is going to be very, 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 very confident, very, very sure of what we are doing. And we will continue with this effort of making friends and trying to reduce hostilities to the best of our capabilities and abilities. Vineet.
Absolutely right. And Gautam, the China factor, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? That's exactly what also India thinks of when we are making this outreach. And why not? Every mature country, every country that wants to prosper, just like China, is going to think in that direction.
Well, the one, glaring fact is that the Chinese economy is at nearly 18 billion, and we are at 18 trillion, and we are at 4 trillion. So this, when China grows at 5%, it grows on a base of 17.9 trillion. And when we grow at 7%, we grow on the basis of 4 trillion. So they are a formidable enemy and frenemy, maybe, because we also import a lot of things from them. In fact, the trade with China has only grown despite every effort to try and curb it and replace it. With that, we are, in strategic terms for China, we are a country that they must put down, because if China is to dominate Asia, then India cannot. It's a sort of an axiomatic. Now, we of course are being helped to an extent by the United States because of the perceptions of Quad by AUKUS, which is the military arm of it, being developed out of Australia. We are participating in the South China Sea, and as General Katoch pointed out, we have gone into their backyard. We have supplied BrahMos missiles to Philippines. We are talking to Vietnam, but Vietnam again is hard-bound because it does a lot of trade with China. So this is an ongoing situation in which India has to do the best it can to ward off China, and we are making a very valiant effort, both in terms of our military capabilities and preparedness and our diplomacy. It's going to get much easier when we get to 8 and 10 trillion. There is, in military terms, General Katoch will probably agree, a window of opportunity which is rapidly closing because India is becoming strategically powerful, if not across the board. It is developing enough military muscle to ward off China, even though China has a much bigger armed forces in all the 3 branches. They have theater commands already established, and so on. But our advantage is we've got some critical equipment which we have developed and have some autonomy over, and we have a very well-developed armed forces who have been in battle and are a professional army, and there are no conscripts in it. And this gives us, a formidable advantage that many of the top armed forces around the world have noticed.
All right, we've run out of time. I'm just going to quickly take some closing thoughts from Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev and Mr. Rabindra Sachdev as well, and then we're going to conclude. Ambassador Sachdev, concluding thoughts from you, sir.
I would like to make 2 points. Firstly, in the next 5 years of the Modi 3, Asia, Indo-Pacific is going to be extremely important. Center of gravity seems to be shifting towards this region. And due to growth, due to various flashpoints and choke points like Strait of Malacca, Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, etc. So Indian Ocean area is going to be of critical importance, not only for us, but also for Chinese, who depend on 70% of their crude imports via Strait of Malacca. Secondly, our Prime Minister is to soon go to G7 summit as a special invitee in Italy. And I think the inauguration with 6 or 7 heads of state or government of the region is a symbolic step which lends greater credibility for India as a regional power, as a representative of Great South. Thank you.
Mr. Sachdev?
Thank you. Quick 2 points. Another pattern in our neighborhoods, I think we can see is that alternatingly at times, one party in power in any of these countries tilts a bit towards India or tilts towards China when the other party comes in power. I mean, that has been a kind of a pattern if you look even in Sri Lanka and Maldives, etc. So these will be factors out there. And as I think one of our colleagues said, that, diplomacy is always a work in progress. You have to keep on shadow boxing, push and pull, etc. Lastly, to the point of Indo-Pacific, yesterday was interesting observation I heard from Putin at the Petersburg Forum. The moderator asked him, should we create a 3rd capital in the Far East? Because Petersburg was during the colonial, times of European whatever, in Moscow. And Putin seriously was discussing, saying that the center of the world is moving towards the Pacific region. Yes, we could seriously consider to create a 3rd capital facing Asia. So definitely, yes, Asia is where a lot of action is going to be.
All right, would like to thank all our guests for being a part of this wonderful conversation.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.